This is Eber Phelps with another legislative report from the state capitol. As you know, the legislature was off last week after completing the first half of the session, so once again we are back here in Topeka at the Capitol. Pretty busy week in the Appropriations Committee. We continue to have our budget subcommittees meeting and then giving their reports on their respective budgets as far as governor's recommendation and also all the efficiency reports. And as I've mentioned in the past, the Regents institutions came through quite well as far as their efficiencies. They're doing a lot of great things to cut costs, and this is all a result of the Alvarez-Marcel study, which is looking for some efficiencies. As you know, with our budget situation, we're trying to save money wherever we can. Now, right before the break, you might recall the House and Senate both passed a tax bill, which the governor vetoed. In turn, the House was able to come up with the votes to override that veto with 85 votes. Senate was 3 votes short. So the Senate, as far as the House is concerned, we'd done our work, and it was time for them to step up and come up with some sort of a tax bill. So they worked on the governor's tax bill here on Tuesday, I believe it was, or maybe it was Wednesday. They worked on the governor's tax bill, and a motion was made to divide the bill. So they divided it into several sections, and each one of those was voted down. Ultimately, the whole bill was voted down, so it is dead for the session, and it's now up to the Senate to take something up. The rumor is they want to now work on the budgets and come up with funding and then work on that tax bill. So the House, I think, had the right approach to work on the tax bill and get that out of the way. That would have made for a great second half had the governor not vetoed that bill. Now, speaking of the governor, of course, you're hearing the rumors that the governor may be leaving the state of Kansas as he may receive an appointment as far as the Bush administration is concerned. They're looking to appoint him as the ambassador to the United Nations on food and agriculture. That is still somewhat of a rumor. I'm trying to verify that, and so far everybody's being pretty tight-lipped, but the news services have been reporting it. It is the big talk in the Capitol. And then, of course, if the governor leaves his post as governor of the state of Kansas to assume that role as ambassador, that would mean the lieutenant governor, Jeff Collier, would step up into that position. The tax plan is dead, as I mentioned, and so one of the things that still looms out there is the reports we all received this week regarding the lawsuit over school funding, the Gannon versus the state of Kansas. We received many reports this week on summarizing the contents of that. What it boils down to is no surprise to me and a lot of other people, and that is the state is not doing its job in funding K-12 education here in our state. The Senate has now taken up, or at least created, the Senate President has created a special committee on the school finance. And because the school finance formula that the governor put in place here, the block grants, that was ruled unconstitutional, unfair, et cetera, so the Senate has stepped up with a special committee on the school funding. The House already had one in place, and subsequently they will have to work on one. Personally, I think the formula that was put in place in 1992 was the result of a great bipartisan effort, and it also was fair. And that's the whole idea of a school funding formula. When we look at rural districts, metropolitan districts, we want to have something fair, and I believe the formula that was created in 1992 just needs to be funded. And of course, it is a great formula in that it can be tweaked when you have population shifts, drastic enrollment losses or increases, and you can adjust to those figures. So we are at the end of this first week after the turnaround, so we're on that final stretch. Of course, the other big news in the state of Kansas is a tragedy with all the fires. I went to a meeting today. It was legislators that represent districts that had fire situations or fire events, and we had word from the emergency management people, Farm Bureau, Department of Agriculture, Kansas Livestock Association. It's just heartbreaking to hear of some of the losses out there. The count so far, at least that we got this afternoon, is there's been 646,950 acres have been burned up, and of course that just creates all kinds of hardship for the cattle owners, what to do with the cattle. Many cattle have perished in those fires, and subsequently there are efforts now To address that, we're looking at tax exemption on fencing equipment, or materials that people need to rebuild their fences, contain the cattle. There's all kinds of relief efforts going on. They've received shipments of hay from as far away as Ohio, and a lot of cash donations. If you go on to KLA.org, it's Kansas Livestock Association, KLA.org, they've got a lot of information on there. But I'd also point out, if you go to the Adjutant General's website, just go to the state of Kansas, Adjutant General, look at news releases, and there is where you're going to find some readily available updates on the whole fire situation. As we know, Clark County, Reno County, just tragedy all around in those particular counties, not to mention all that's going on in Ellis County as well. The fact of the matter is that we need to do something, and I know this the governor's created somewhat of a disastrous situation, but all these groups are going together and trying to come up with some relief for the folks that have been suffering from that. So this is your report for the, I believe this is the 9th week of the session, if I recall. Yes, week 9. So we'll be back next week with another report. Thanks for listening.